Hello everybody and welcome to the Good Girl Deprogramming launch event live. And they're working. Hold your applause for just a second because I just want to take a second to celebrate the lady of the moment. I'm sure you all know Michelle, but if you don't, let's just have a proper round of applause for this incredible woman. Cry.
No, I'm not going to cry.
Good. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ceryn. I have been Michelle's book wing woman throughout this process, and so she very kindly asked me to MC today's event. So for those of you who were online with us last night, we've already done this once.
Dress rehearsal.
We'll be all prepped. For those of you who are here for the first time today, what we're going to be doing is we're having a little bit of a chat. I'm going to be running us through some of the questions from the Good Girl Deprogramming quiz, which hopefully you've all taken. But if you haven't, don't panic, there's still time to do that. We're going to be talking a little bit about the book, and then later on I'll be opening up and asking if any of you have any questions. So I'm sure you will all have stacks of burning questions, and we'll try and get through as many as we can. So before we get into all of that, what I do have to say as well is bar is open downstairs. Please don't feel, in our rebellious women personas that we are all embodying today, please don't feel you have to wait to go to the toilet until we're finished talking or anything like that. Just go. Please just go. If you need another drink, no. If you need another drink, if you need to go to the toilet, please just go. Like, don't feel weird about it.
And if you need to sneak off to the football.
And if you need to sneak off the football, totally fine. So, let's just start by going through some of those questions from the Good Girl Reprogramming quiz. How many of you, out of interest, how many of you who have taken the quiz so far? Ooh. So there's quite a few of you. There's still quite a few left to take it, which is really exciting actually, because I took it having read through the book, having gone through this whole process with Michelle, and was like, I'm going to be a rebel woman, and had a real shock about the places where I still needed to do a little bit of deconditioning work. So it's a good one. It's a really interesting exercise. So let's run through just a handful of those questions. So first of all, and excuse me if I'm looking down, I'm just checking my notes. Raise your hand if you think you often apologise for things that aren't your fault.
Always.
That's a lot of hands. Not as many hands as I thought, or maybe some of the hands are just a bit lower down than expected. So far, in the over 700 people who have taken this quiz, 70% of them said that they did that. That's a hell of a lot of apologising we're doing for things that aren't ours. And I did it downstairs while I was standing at the bar. I turned to somebody and said, oh, sorry. And I was like, I can't even say I don't do this anymore. Okay, next one. Raise your hand if you struggle to assert or maintain your boundaries.
I'm getting better.
Yeah, well, I like this. So 55% of the women who filled out the quiz are in that category. 55% of us struggle to maintain or assert our boundaries. Let's just think for a second of how much energy we're wasting, energy that we could be spending on us and on the important things, because we're just giving ourselves and our energy to all the things that actually aren't right for us. Third one, raise your hand if you often find yourself prioritising other people's needs over your own. I love the fact that a hand went up there before I even finished it. Yes, that's right. That's right.
Always.
So this one, 80% of the women who filled out this quiz said that they prioritise other people's needs ahead of their own. Who's looking after us? If that's the case, who's looking after us? This book, it isn't just a matter of importance for, the big picture, although of course that's really important. Each and every one of us it's important for, because look at how much energy we're expending on other people's needs, on not asserting our boundaries, on saying sorry when we don't bloody need to. This is why it's important, because each and every one of us in this room, men and women alike, can benefit from this. So with all of this said, let me turn to the lady of the moment. Why, Michelle, is this the case? Why is this behaviour so prevalent?
Because this is how we've been trained. Literally, from birth, we have been trained to be nice, to be sharing, to not be messy. Says like literally, people were coming around the house today, so I had to tidy up this morning. But that's exactly how we've been conditioned to be good girls, and then good women, and then sort of adhere to all of the stereotypical ways of behaving, because that's how we were taught, that's how our mothers were taught, that's how our grandmothers were taught. So if you think about it, sort of can't even work out, how long ago was it when Nana was born?
23.
Yeah, 1923, pretty much. Those attitudes was how I was raised, and probably those of us in the room as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bit scary to kind of realise that.
Absolutely. So when did you realise that was it a light bulb moment in terms of your conditioning and your programming, or what was it that made you realise, and what was that like?
So hilariously, 18-year-old into university, learning about classical conditioning. I'm like, yes, the classical conditioning is all about dogs and bells, and I knew it in my head, but I didn't the whatever it was, the penny, there's a word I've forgotten, the penny did not drop until I had my ADHD diagnosis. And so I got busy with you, trying to figure out, like, what is all of this masking stuff, and like pretending to be normal and having to navigate the world pretending to be like, I'm normal and I'm not weird. And it was really interesting that I was like, yes, I've got this shit down now. I'm like, I'm really, really unmasked and all like ADHD. And then I was like, I'm not though. And then there's like, there is something else. What is this? Why am I still apologising? Why am I still putting everybody else before my own? Why am I still absolutely, the children in the room are old enough, fucking knackered? Why am I so tired? And so I came to the realisation that there was this good girl conditioning, which is fine. We're like, there's this thing, but I'm a psychologist and very nosy and curious and really wanted to understand how we got there. So I knew what it was, but then I didn't know why.
And I think there's something about the depth of that you've uncovered in this book, and I say this in the foreword of the book, which you very kindly asked me to write, that the moment you said to me, there's this thing called Biderman's chart of coercion. It's what they use on people who've been in cults, it's what they use on people who've been in prisoner of war camps, and I've suddenly realised that you can apply it step by step to women in patriarchy. Now, I've written a book on feminism, the sister to your book, in fact. And still, I remember hearing that line and just thinking, it wasn't just a penny that dropped, it was an entire bag of pennies that dropped. I just kind of was like, oof, hold on a second. We're like cult members, we're like prisoners of war, and I don't say any of those things in a disrespectful manner. We are so deeply conditioned to even the tiniest little detail. And that's where this book, I think, is so groundbreaking. Because that curiosity, that psychologist's curiosity, you've really gone into the little bits of it and just blew my mind. And I'm sure there's other people in this room who've already read the book whose minds are blown, and people who will go on to read the book. Prepare for your minds to be blown, people. What about you? That was a big surprise to me. What surprised you as you were writing the book?
Okay, I said this last night. We did a virtual book launch last night, so I felt like I've done a really good dress rehearsal, so that's quite nice. So I'm not going to go the whole backstory about how I found it. It's in the book, actually. Read the book and you'll find out. But figuring out seeing the Bidermans, well, I'll do the Biderman bit. That's probably useful. So Albert Biderman
Prepare for your psychology lesson.
was a social scientist who worked in the USA. He was a military social scientist. And during the Korean War, the US powers that be were really distraught because loads of prisoners of war were defecting to China. And you know what America's like? It's like, why would anybody leave here? And thought that the Chinese had some magical brainwashing machine. Sadly, they didn't. Biderman and his team interviewed loads of prisoners, like former prisoners of war, the ones that didn't defect, to find out what it was. And he came up with this chart of coercion. And I was preparing for a learning and development conference, and I was trying to figure out this why thing still. And I found this on Wikipedia. Wikipedia is really useful. On Wikipedia, and I just read it. I was like, oh, this is why. This is exactly why. And so within an hour of seeing that, I had, and I've shared it a few times, I literally had the whole table, the tables in the book, of how this can be applied to women. Amnesty International use it for torture. It's used a lot in domestic violence as well. This so coercive control. It is actually illegal, but it's really hard to prove. So I think the more I kind of dug, the more I was surprised by how deep-rooted this stuff is.
And how invasive it is on every aspect. You know, we talked about this last night, but there's one chapter in the book that had me curled up in a ball on the sofa for about 3 hours in tears, because I was just like, oh my God, this is so much. And it wasn't so much, it was the chapter on fear. And it wasn't so much the big stuff, the stuff we know. You know, as a woman, I do not go out for a walk by myself after dark. I do not walk in the dark with earphones in. That stuff we know. It wasn't when I was talking about my personal, sorry, I forgot I had a microphone on, my personal experiences and traumas that were a problem. It was the tiny little bits of fear, the bits that are so kind of, they're so under the radar, they're so small, they're such an integrated part of our lives that you don't even realise they're there. You don't even realise they're not normal. And it was reading that bit for me that it blew my mind wide open. I just almost couldn't believe how much we didn't know. And I think, yeah, part of me would have loved to have been in your brain as you were going through this, putting the bits together. I was probably as close as I could be. As you were pulling the bits together of how this in Weidemann's chart links to women under patriarchy. Part of me also thinks that the actual moments of figuring that out must have been an absolute shitstorm.
Yeah.
It was terrifying.
Oh yeah, it was almost like, oh, surely somebody's like put this together before. So I looked and I couldn't find anybody who'd done that. So I was like, shit, I'm gonna have to do this now.
And you have, and you've done it brilliantly.
Thank you.
So one of the questions I asked you last night, which I'm going to repeat now, unlike me, curled up in a ball crying on the sofa, how do you want your readers to feel when they're reading this book?
So I've written this book not for people just to take away and read it on their own, because I think I did this with all the early readers, which was probably a bit cruel. Sorry, everybody that read the book. I want people to have women around them to do the work together and to talk about it. So one of the ways that society keeps us behaving is this idea of social isolation. So there's a really good quote, and I can't remember who it is because, you know, memory of a goldfish, but it's in the book about is it Germaine Greer, the men are always uneasy when they see women talking, that one. And yes, so it's been written to be read in community with other people. And when you've got that community, and I am creating guidelines, which aren't finished yet. I've got the book out, you know.
Got a whole book to write.
They'll be finished very soon. To sort of to create a container for this work. I don't want to send people into sobbing messes or having nervous breakdowns. I want people to feel safe and supported through this, and that's how we do that, is by being in community with other women.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think that another thing that you talk about a lot, or another thing that I picked up as well from reading the book, is this book's funny. I mean, me talking about crying on the sofa and me talking about the implicit fear that is being a woman in this world, let me not detract from the fact that this book is really funny. You've made it so accessible, so funny, so it does feel like you're just having a cup of tea with a friend. So I think while there are bits that may very well shake you, it's also a good read. There are parts that are fun, and there are parts that are quite irreverent in the way that you deal with this stuff. Never disrespectful, but quite irreverent. And I think that's a really powerful way to approach this, right?
Yep. So as a psychologist, I know that scaring people and putting the fear of God in them and being angry is never going to change anyone's behaviour, because people are just like, oh, I'm defensive. She's like an angry feminist lunatic and I'm not going to get involved. So, and I get into trouble about this all the time, don't I? Because I am not serious. I can't, obviously I am serious, but I'm playful, and I think you catch more flies, as it were, with having fun and being playful and being, you know, a Victorian school mom.
Yeah. Can't imagine.
I have actually been accused of that before. It's fine.
Well, with that said, which chapter for you do you think, I've mentioned the fear one, but which chapter for you do you think will be the hardest one for people to read?
I think, well, for me, it's the strategic exhaustion. So all of the different ways society keeps women and girls tired. So that, you know, how we are supposed to behave, how we are supposed to look, how we are supposed to do everything for everybody else, how we're supposed to go to work and be at home like that's our only job, and all of that stuff. So that took me 6 months to write, and it almost became I am too tired to write this chapter. Please read the Nap Ministry, and we'll go on to the next chapter. It was that close, because it was painful. I think I did most of my emotional eating.
Yeah.
That's
over Christmas though, right?
Well, it was 6 months, so yes. We had a whole 2 seasons.
I vividly remember we had a conversation where you said, I can't write this chapter, and we actually said, why don't we start the chapter, which you did in the end, with a list of, here are all the reasons I am fucking knackered. And so you did. That's how the chapter begins, and then it kind of went from there, right?
Yep. Yeah, but that was the worst one for me.
Yeah.
Because I think that's still the area that I'm mostly in. But yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah.
And as I was even finishing writing the book, there are still, even now, like this week, Dee had to tell me to ask somebody who has coached me in the past, to ask them, because they've got quite a big audience and following, what was I like? Literally, really? I can't ask Donna and Cheryl to possibly, you know.
I can't believe that you haven't done it yet. It's not like I asked it on the day. We mentioned it about 3 weeks ago, and I said, this is what you need to do. And,
yeah.
And I said, and they responded, I've lost them knowing. Unbelievable.
So yeah, even now.
But this is an important thing, right? You talk about this in the book. Thank you for asking, Adi. Thank you for making it. You talk about this in the book, that this isn't just read this book and you will be deprogrammed. That's not how this works. This is an ever unfolding journey. This is, you know, we could read this book again in a year and we will take something very different from it.
Yeah.
We'll be a lot further down the line, each of us, I hope. Meet you all here same time next year. And we'll be like, look what rebels we are. We'll be in a very different position, and there will still be more deprogramming to do, because this is the way it works. It's a constant unfolding journey. And as you said before, we're deconditioning what has been there for 100 years plus. Well, that's not going to change overnight, guys.
The dawn of time.
Totally. That's not going to change overnight. It's going to take time, but this is why it's so important that we start it, and this is why these ripple effects are so important of everything we're doing.
And it drives me nuts when you pick up a self-help book and it's basically, here is your 12-step process to whatever. And this book is not that. This book will tell you some, this is the thing. Here are some sort of, facts, figures, hilarious, amusing anecdotes. And these are the questions you can ask yourself. These are the things that you can think about. Because I don't want to replace your good girl conditioning with Michelle's conditioning, because I am not the expert of any of your lives. Just barely keeping my shit together over here.
With that in mind, though, in terms of, because you've had to do quite a lot of your own deconditioning to write this book.
Yeah.
So what have been your biggest challenges on that journey so far, do you think?
Oh, saying no. So I've got this hilarious FOMO thing, It's like, and so it's like, so is it JOMO instead, joy of missing out? So instead of fear of missing out, and being able to just to say, no, I don't have time to do that. No, I can't afford to come there. That's like being able to say no to people. It's just been massive, because I've never, my good girl really is around people pleasing. Like, if somebody didn't like me, I would literally make it my mission to make them like me. Like, no matter what. It was just bonkers. I have some very good friends that I actually made like me. That's fine now. But,
Shout out to those ladies in the room right now.
no, she's in Egypt. But yeah, it's that people pleasing and who cares if somebody doesn't like you?
I actually, the other night, I watched the Taylor Swift documentary on Netflix, and I nearly texted you and said, oh my God, Taylor Swift, because that's her whole thing, is that, you know, the center of her being for so long was, I must make people like me. Then Kanye West gets up on a stage and suggests to a 17-year-old her that no one likes her. And it's like The Rock, it's immediate having to deprogram that. I guess yours at least got to be a little bit more gradual. Yeah. There was no Kanye West.
No, thank God.
What about the joys? So that was your toughest part of deprogramming. What were the best bits for you of deprogramming your inner good girl?
So I talk a lot about like feedback in the book and how we have to detach from feedback. So if it's criticism or if it's praise, you almost need to not. The best bit has been like seeing people's reactions to the book, which is against what I say in the book, but it's been really lovely. Even those I said, right, pull it to bits. I've sent it to a couple of psychologists and said, like, literally just pull it to bits. If it's shit, I need to know. And they were like, oh, can I write an endorsement? So there's that many, I asked, I think 20 women to read this book. And there's that many endorsements. I had to put some at the front and some at the back. So
And save some for later.
I know. So I said at the bottom, it's like, this book is literally sandwiched in love. So if people don't like it, it's fine. It's protected by lovely people.
I love that so much. And it's interesting, isn't it, that sandwich of love, it means that, because there will be negative feedback. We know there will. And when it comes in, you got your own rebel woman gang, who are just going to flick that out the way for you so you don't even have to deal with it.
Yeah.
That's what we're all about.
Yeah. I'll set D on them.
So what do you think has been your biggest act of rebellion as a rebel woman?
No. You didn't ask me that question last
Someone
night.
else did. Someone
Did
else
I give
did.
an answer?
Yeah, but I can't remember what it was now.
Brilliant. James,
I know you talked about being a little bit. We had a brilliant moment last night in the online thing where Michelle was talking about how the bit she struggles with now is still dealing with like authority figures, and particularly with people in the medical profession. And somebody in the comments went, "Does this mean you're afraid of men in white coats?" And we were like,
There's a whole chapter on this.
I mean, read the book, guys. Read the book. So, yeah,
The history of hysterical women.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can't remember what your answer was, but what do you think your biggest act of rebellion has been?
I think probably writing the bloody book. Because I, as a recovering people pleaser, if that's okay with you, to use James's joke, we're trained to sort of stay quiet, stay small, don't give people your opinions, because you might upset people. And I think that whole might I upset people by writing this book? And we've had some niggles. What about the men? Speak to James about that one. I have to start somewhere. Mm-hmm. And so I think writing this book and sort of putting it out in the world. And a friend, colleague, peer of mine, Dr. Tammy Watchorn wrote a book called The Change Ninja, which is really funny. It's like a choose your own adventure book. It's great. And she said on LinkedIn to me yesterday, I think it was the day before last week. And she said, once you birth the book out into the world, it's not yours anymore. So it's just going to do what it's going to do. And I'm like, oh, what?
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got a bit of a control freak issue as well, but that's fine. Just, yeah.
I think that's an interesting one, isn't it? We both went with the same publisher, and Nicola, our publisher, is very big on, who is the book? What is the energy of this book itself? Because it's not you, it's the book. And this book is ferocious. She's absolutely ferocious, and I'm excited to see what she does in the world, which I guess leads us on to another question I want to ask, which is, what are your plans for this book now? Now the book is out, she might well go and do her own thing, but as long as you're in control, what are your plans?
What am I in control of? You can't control what you can't control. Anyway, so I'm going to be launching a membership. So the Good Girl Rebellion gang in the new year, where we're going to go through each chapter of the book one at a time and talk about it. For those people who haven't got their circle of friends, we're going to be that circle of friends. I'm stopping doing one-on-one coaching as well, because I think, again, the community is really important. So I'm going to do small group coaching. And then going to make James do some writing. So James and I are going to write book number 2, which we look at through the same sort of through Weideman's lens, but we look at good student habits and good employee habits. So how we are kept behaving through school. So as parents, we can do as much as we want. We still have to put our children through school, and they still have to, unless they're really lucky and they can work for themselves, they still have to navigate that work environment. So it's almost like, what happens to your lovely creative 3-year-old before you send them to school, and then your employer's whinging at the other end that they're not creative or innovative, or they don't take responsibility at the other end? So it's like, how do we unpick all of this stuff?
Yeah.
So it's boys as well, and James is going to help me write that one.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point, is that piece about the other aspects of deprogramming, because, as you say, there have been comments about, well, what about the men? We had a brilliant comment last night from someone who said, you're talking here about patriarchy, but what about capitalism? What about white supremacy? What about ableism? What about homophobia? And all of the isms, all of them. And it's so true. And you can't write every one of those books.
Nope.
Firstly, because I think you'd be rocking in a corner by the time you finish.
And I'd be really fat.
That's okay, you're a rebel.
No, it's like,
secondly,
keep having to buy clothes, so it's annoying.
Secondly, because you don't have lived experience of that stuff.
No.
A lot of those things are not your books to write.
No.
But by this book going out in the world, I think I'm right in saying there is a real hope that it will open the floodgates for a lot of other books that will use this same framework of the chart of coercion and what that means for us under capitalism, under white supremacy, under ableism, and so on and so forth and so on. Because this is the cornerstone of something that's really important for all of us, isn't it?
Yep.
I love the fact that you're taking it to groups and to communities. I think it's beautiful. I'm really excited to see where it goes. So let me ask you, you're very clear in the book, and you also said earlier on as well, this isn't about taking that good girl programming and then we're going to wipe that clean and we're going to bring in Michelle's programming. I mean, the look on her face suggests that
I'd quite enjoy that,
could
but no.
happen. So just everyone be careful. But it's not about doing that. So for you, what would a world in which we are all rebel women roaming free, what would that look like? What would it feel like? What would it be like?
So you and I did a really good Imagineering session, didn't we? After a very long day of sort of picking the book to bits. And I have that to type up still. That was, it was about 6 months ago, but it's fine. I've got it. I know where it is, which is half the battle. But I think it's just a world where everybody is free to be themselves, or whatever that is. And that's what we need to go for. Well, obviously without harming other people. There has to be a bit of give and take. But yeah.
I love that. I said this last night and I immediately felt arrogant about it because you got the word from me, but I don't care, I'm saying it again. In the book you talk about this because we sat and, well, what would it be like? Well, there is the simple things like we'd be able to go for a run at night. I wouldn't go for a run, just to be clear. No. Some people would be able to go for a run at night time. We would be able to eat what the hell we wanted and not care about what size clothes we were in. We would be able, all of these different things. There are those bits. And then there's actually just the way we would walk through the world. This is who I am. You're just going to have to deal with that because I'm not shrinking myself for anybody. I'm not dimming my light for anybody. I'm not trying to be anything that I'm not. This is just me. And I can't imagine what a world full of rebel women, how incredible that would feel to be in. But I love the fact that you're starting to build it.
Yep. We're getting there.
We are.
A little tiny baby steps.
We are.
The world is not going to be changed.
Sorry. That was a perfect time. That's a drink more water alarm. I've got to turn it off.
Drink more water alarm.
We are.
Yes. So this is not going to start like literally. We're not going to go and overthrow government. We should, but we're not going to. Get David Cameron. What on? Anyway, stop it.
Let's not go down that route. We've only got the room.
We are not going there today. Sorry. Get off soapboxes away. It is. I came across a really lovely website when I was doing my research for the book. It's called Equality Begins at Home, and it's all about us doing the little tiny things that we need to. We can't go to work and expect equality at work when we haven't got equality at home. So it's, teaching the almost 14-year-old how to do the dishes. He's done loads today, actually. I'm very impressed with him.
I would say Oliver should get a round of applause, but I think you'd just be embarrassed, so let's not do that just in case.
No, he's dying.
Sorry, Oliver.
But it's the small little rebellions. It doesn't have to be, marching on Parliament
Every day.
Just the little things that we can do. That I tell the story. I'm going to go there. Tell the story in the book. So James, when we started,
This is one of my favourite bits of the week. Sorry, James.
Before I start this story, I need to tell everybody that James does more than half, probably more than 75% of the tidying and cleaning in the house. So just to kind of put that out there. So when James and I started dating, sorry if that's a surprise to anybody in the room, but people don't know still. It's really hilarious. We started working together before we started dating. He used to come around to my house to work. And so I, being the hostess with the mostess, would always make the cups of tea and coffee. And I was writing the book at the time, wasn't I? And probably he'd been living in at least a year, living with us. And I was still making the cups of tea just as a habit. This is what we did. And one day I thought, hang on a second. James never made me a cup of tea. Bearing in mind, he does literally does the laundry, does the dishes, he does cooking, bathroom cleaning, all that. He does loads. And I was like, And I made a decision, because I could have got really cross then, which I would have been very hypocritical too. Anyway, let's face it. But I could have got really cross and felt really resentful that I have to make all the cups of teas in this house. This is absolutely outrageous. But instead of choosing that path, I chose the path the way I went, I wonder what would happen if, James, could you make me a cup of tea, please? And he's like, sure. He got up and made a cup of tea. And I was like, what else can I get him to do? No, joking. And so I kind of I said, right, so every day I'm going to ask him for a cup of tea. Hilarious. So a little experiment on James.
She literally used to check in with me once every couple of weeks, being like, here's how it's gone this week. Sorry, James.
And yeah, so it happened. He made me a cup of tea. There was no fuss. There was no argument. There was no pushback. He would, we were in a very respectful relationship. He would, if I ask him for something, he will do that for me. And it was revelationary, because I was like, I've never really asked anybody for anything before, just little things. Anyway, so I had to tell him what would happen. We've had a proper laugh about it. And I'm naturally a scientist, so I do like to perform experiments, but, I wonder what would happen if. I think it's an ADHD thing as well. But yeah, I just did it. And it happens. And if I fancy a cup of tea and I can't be asked to move, then I just ask James to get me one.
Like magic, one appears.
I know, isn't it good?
Isn't it? It is those small things, though, isn't it? I think one of my other favourite bits in the book, and I don't want to give any spoilers to anybody who hasn't read it yet, is the story about Jill, who is the wife of somebody that you guys overheard talking when you were out for lunch one day. And to cut a long story short, the story goes that it sounds like Jill is probably a very busy lady right now because her husband last Christmas was saying, oh, the prep for Christmas is easy. Jill does it all. And we had a whole, we must have talked about this for an hour. Mm-hmm. Does Jill want to do it all? Does Jill just love being the Christmas elf? Because that's the thing with some of this, right? None of this book is about, we are shaming you if you are somebody who wants to look a certain way or wants to behave a certain way or wants to do all the Christmas prep because you just love it or wants to make all the cups of teas because maybe your partner makes crap cups of teas. Fine. Like, there is no shaming here for that, but it is about understanding. I would say it's about coming back to yourself and actually sitting and saying, is this coming from a place of my conditioning and my programming? Or is this actually something I enjoy? And I wonder how wonderful it would be if we all got to ask that question in all of the different ways that are reflected in the book.
Yeah. Do I want to do this, or is it because I should? I hate that word. Should. Or am I supposed to? Yeah. Poor Jill. These guys were literally, you told me this one, verbal manspreading, which is a new thing as well. You know, you're in a pub having a Christmas dinner with your boyfriend and his mum, and literally these guys are talking very loudly. It's like, dude, shush. You know, we can't hear ourselves thinking. And yeah. And as soon as he said, oh yes, I'm sure we're all sorted for Christmas. Jill, you know, all I have to do is buy Jill a present. And I was like, got the remarkable out my bag. I was like, I am making a note of
Nice
that.
and forward.
Didn't I? I was like, that's going in the book. There's loads of things that, like, literally what's happened over the last couple of years while I've been writing have gone in the book.
So many, and there's so many more. I wonder how many more examples you will get from people as they're reading the book that could go into volume 2 with everybody's stories.
Yep.
So that's all of my questions. So I'm going to open to you all now and ask, does anybody have any questions for Michelle? The Newcastle fans outside would like to know what you think the score of today's match will be.
Chelsea 7.
Obviously, you'd say that.
Newcastle 0.
No,
Yay!
seriously now.
I'm from Sunderland.
Does anyone have any non-football ideally? But I mean, go for everyone. Does anybody have any questions for Michelle?
When did she turn into Amanda Demanda?
I'd really love to know where this has come from. Andrew's been calling me Amanda for the last couple of days, and I don't know why.
I keep getting text messages saying, now you must do this, now you must do that, post on LinkedIn, post on Facebook, tell people about my book.
Yes. And your pointers?
I'm afraid this is what happens when your friend releases a book. I was a bit like that too.
You did it to me as well.
Yeah, but, you know, not quite this.
Andrew released a book 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go then. It's all give and take. It's all.
Yes, it is. Amanda, is that?
Amanda Demanda.
Okay, yes.
Absolutely part of your rebel woman, though, right?
Yep.
The rebel woman is more demanding. Started with cups of tea. The world's a oyster now.
Yeah. What else can I ask for?
Did you have a question over there? Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
Sandra. So, Michelle, so you're probably going to answer me with read the book. But, where do we start? As a good girl, typical good girl, how do we deprogram and how do we start?
So the quiz that I created was because, obviously, having written a chapter about being exhausted, realising that we don't have time to read a whole bloody book. So if you do the quiz, I'll tell you which chapters you should read. So that's the easiest way. So start with the stuff that's like really ingrained is probably your easiest way. But get a gang. I'm in your gang anyway, so it's fine. Sandra and I used to work together. And she's come all the way from Oxford to see us. You're still in Oxford, aren't you? Yes. She keeps moving between Oxford and London. It's very confusing. It's like, where do you live now? So she's come all the way up to see us. Aww. So yes. Quiz.
Yes.
It's just starting part. Yes.
And I always say, with this stuff, it's not necessarily always about the big things, is it? Sometimes it almost seems to get worse before it gets better, because we have those moments of realising all of the stuff that's going on, and oh my goodness, the conversations we had when you first started spotting it all. You have this moment of realising just how programmed you are. and going through this whole phase of thinking, oh my goodness, it's going to be awful, this is never going to happen. But that's the way to get to the breakthrough. That's the way to change things, is by moving through that phase.
But don't sit and stew on your own.
Yeah, that's why the community's important.
That's why the community is important. Because it's easy to sit and stew on your own.
Absolutely.
Not knocking anyone in particular.
Anyone else? Does anyone else have any questions?
Would it be a good book to read as part of a book club then?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's literally in the instructions of how to read it. Get your club/coven/gang together and read it in community with other women. So yes, please do find.
I'm in a book club, so
Excellent.
that I'll suggest it's our next one. It's also called The Coven.
I love it.
So it feels like
Absolutely, that's how I wrote it.
amazing.
Yeah. Anyone else? Any other questions? Yes.
If you could go back to 10-year-old Michelle, what would be one piece of advice you would give yourself?
So, do you not hear Mum? No. What advice would I give to 10-year-old me?
Maybe we should ask your mum. What advice would you give to 10-year-old Michelle now? She's like, can't say in front of this audience.
I don't know. It's an interesting question, that, because I wouldn't be here without all of the experiences I've had. Maybe, put some money on Apple. But yeah, it's. I suppose I stopped caring so much about what people think of you. It's probably the thing. And put some money on Apple.
Stick a quid on.
Yeah.
Thank
Can
you.
I rephrase that then? As a mum to two young children, two young girls,
Yeah.
that are younger than that, what advice would you give to that kind of age, knowing what we know now, what you've learned through the book?
So, one of the things I forgot to mention what's next, I can't even see it, there's a camera in the way. I'm going to be working at some point in the next year with an American doctor of education to look at how we translate all the sweariness of this book into something that mothers and daughters can read together. So simplify it as well and take all the rude stuff out, but it's hard for that age because they are going through school and all the expectations of school and trying to be a good student and trying to be a good friend, and it's like that whole between 10 and 20 is awful with friends, isn't it? Because you don't want to stack out and you don't want to be strange, but I was one of the strange children, but as you can probably tell. But yeah, it's hard. So I'll have an answer for you in about 6 months, if that's okay.
But if I can jump in, I don't have children at this point in my life, but I do have a little goddaughter who is 8, and I cannot tell you since I read this book how much my approach to her has changed. Just little things where, again, always classed myself as a feminist, written a book with feminist in the title, and still I've noticed things that I do when I'm with her and her brother, and now a lot of it has been with me. And that has then led on to when she's asking me things, when she comes and asks questions, I'm changing the answers that I'm given. So I think as a mother, there will almost certainly be things that as you read the book, you're like, I can directly do that with my child, or my children, I'm certain I will. But also I think from my perspective, what I've noticed is how much it's impacted the way I interact with her and the way that I'm already trying to unpick her conditioning before, which our mother is probably very unhappy with, if I'm honest. But she'll thank me one day, hopefully. It's very much impacted the way that I interact with her, if that helps at all. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, the lady in the back.
Oh, lady.
If you were to give this book to a man, how would you sort of position it, and what would you tell them about what they're going to get out of it?
What I did last night was mean, and I'm probably going to do it again.
How would you position it? So I've read the book. I would probably say it will help help a man to understand all that girls and women have to experience and go through growing up. So there'll be bits that might resonate. We said last night, patriarchy affects everybody. But I'd probably say the bits will resonate will be those that don't. And it's almost a doorway into a corridor of more doorways as to what girls and women are experiencing. And I think that's perhaps a starting point of, if you can, you've not lived the experience, but if you can start to understand someone's perspectives, then whatever position you're in, if it's a father with a daughter, your partner, you could be a business owner, what you can then do to perhaps change the systems that are the problem, not the women. So that's, no, I've not really practiced that.
Good answer.
I have been surprised at the amount of men that have bought the book, not necessarily because they have daughters, but just because they want to read it as well. So I was a surprise actually. Had a lovely message yesterday from somebody I used to work with that's got Logic. I can't remember him, but we'll edit that bit out. And he's bought it because he recognises that he has daughters and how footballers are like ooh, squirrel, what's happening?
So we're done before the match starts because otherwise we're going to hear it all.
But it's all about how he can be different with them and understand what they have to go through. So I think it's worse now than when we grew up, honestly, because we thankfully grew up without the internet and social media, and you know, you finished school and you could close your door and not have to deal with anybody. But now it's like it's relentless, and you've got all of these photoshopped, filtered models that don't look like that themselves, and it's like, this is what you should look like, and it's totally unrealistic.
100%.
And it's so unfair. France, you're not allowed to do that anymore, are you? Not in France anymore. That models aren't allowed to be filtered and photoshopped within an inch of their lives.
So important.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, going back to your question, I think that there is in terms of this book is not a man-hating book. There will be men who will read it and say that it is a man-hating book, and there will be women who will read it and say that it's a woman-hating book, because people do that. But this book is not a man-hating book. This book is a book that talks about women and girls specifically, but it's also not the kind of book that I think, well, I don't know, James, what do you think? I don't think it's a kind of book that is exclusive to women and girls. It's absolutely something that...
Not a bra burning book.
Bras are too pretty and too expensive to burn.
Too uncomfortable to not burn.
Thanks.
I was going to say, it takes a very difficult, traumatic subject in many ways. Just it's like the perfect cocktail of something a bit punchy and bitter, with Michelle's humour and stories that I think allows it just, it's a cocktail analogy, but it just slips down quite nicely. Yeah. But obviously that has been processed. So,
where was that recommendation in the book? That's a crack.
You have to go edit your Amazon one now.
Thank you. I'm conscious of time, to be fair, we're going for another hour, but I'm conscious everybody might need drinks and toilets. Does anybody have any more questions?
Can I have a comment?
Go for it.
I'm really scared to read it. And so then, oh dear me. So then what is the advice for those of us who know we're going to end up crying our hours? I can't even talk.
Oh, I've been crying all week. But yeah.
There's a lot of us in this room, those of us especially perhaps with ADHD, lovely times as well. You know, I'm scared to read it. Because I know it will uncover stuff, I know it's going to open some boxes, I know it's going to be a challenge. We've been talking about it for weeks about our school experiences. What we're going to do then, because for some of us it's going to hurt. It's not going to stop us reading it, or giving it to my 12-year-old niece to read, because that's the point. But it's not going to be easy to read, I don't think, as much as your humour and as what James is saying and all the rest of it. It's going to challenge. So what's your advice for us then? I mean, apart from one-to-one therapy, but you said you're not actually going to do anymore.
Karen can
She'll
though.
put you in my direction.
Go speak to Karen. I think we talked about this, didn't we? We were going to create some resources.
Yeah.
But if it's triggering you, and there are bits, and I do give the trigger warnings.
Yeah.
This will be triggering as fuck. It's one of them. Stop reading it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stop reading it. Like last week, I was at TEDx Teesside Middlesbrough. I've got a thing about crying. I can't cry like a normal person, or like dainty cry. I sob like an absolute lunatic. And we had Lady Unchained as the last. I feel like Debbie as well. She had to hold my hand. And she was talking about the war on women and girls and how, harm that's been done to us and how some women feel safer in prison. And as soon as the music started, there was a song about it. I worry that I've ruined her TED Talk because I'm so loud. Good.
You were absolutely fine.
Ben was like, you were kind of like, and Debbie was like, I'll just hold your hand and she might stop crying soon. It's we have one of the things that we do in terms of our good girl conditioning is try to be dainty crying.
And again, if I can add to that, I would say having read it, having not been the author and having read it, like just go gently. There are some, I was proofreading this, I was working with Michelle all the way through on this, and there were some chapters, just as it took Michelle 6 months to write, there were some chapters that would take me kind of 3 months just to read. Mm-hmm. And I'm not exaggerating with that, because I would have to go so slowly, and I would, so I have PTSD, so there are times where I would get so triggered, I would just come out of my body, and I'd get 10 pages through and go, I've got no idea what I just read, never mind what the spelling and grammar was like. So I will tell you now that the chances are it will be uncomfortable. You're absolutely right. The chances are there will be bits where you cry. There will be bits where you want to throw the bloody thing across the room and be like, shut up, I never want to listen to you again. Ah! There will be. Possibly, or maybe you're not as dramatic as me. But also, go gently with yourself. I think there was a point where every single chapter had a bit at the end that said, if you have struggled with this, please remember, go gently with yourself. Perhaps have a cup of tea or a bit of cake. Talk to a friend. Just go gently. You don't have to read the next. And then we realised that probably wasn't ideal for every chapter. It was a bit repetitive. But that is it. Like, that is the gist here, is go gently. Know that, I always say with clients whenever I'm doing therapy work, if you're crying, I promise I'm not just some sort of masochist. If you're crying, I'm a bit like, yes, because it means it's shifting something. And the stuff that this book is here to shift, now I'm going to get upset. The stuff that this book is here to shift, it's fucking massive and it's fucking important. And so if we do all cry and we do all get angry, God, I really hope that somebody comes and wraps you up in a blanket.
Okay, and you've got my number. Just ring me and shout at me, it's fine.
Send her a picture of the book across the other side of the room, hidden in the freezer. Yeah. Like on Friends, where they put the book in the freezer.
I'm not allowed to come to the hub.
Okay, anybody else? I'm going to do a last call. So if you've got a question, stick your hand up and then I'll get through you all. Is there anybody else? Speak now if everybody.
I've got a question and a comment. Having read the book, I would say that if you're reading the book and you live in the house with someone else, namely your husband, you either need to let him know you're reading it, because when he finds out that you're reading it through another measure, I'll give you a quick example. I'm a multitasker, I have excellent coping strategies, I just get on and I crack on. And the poor man said to me after a couple of chapters, "On for tea?" And I just like really unreasonable, bad language, hysterical. Why do you fucking with me? And he just went, Jesus Christ, because he knows me as a mega psychopath, probably whatever. And he was backing away. What's the matter with you? It was really bad. And then, of course, when I told him, and he went,
So then he was also going, Michelle!
But of course, since then, since the outburst, I've been able to tell him in a language that I understand, because as I say, I just flip from the pages after just putting it down. And so explaining things to him, because one of the comments I made last night was, on the flip side of things, I think the weight of patriarchy on a man's shoulders can be as bad. It's, you know what I mean? So I haven't got the monopoly on it, it's just different. But listening to Nicola, obviously knowing that she's going to be worried about it, yeah, there are some tough bits, but, you know, if you don't want to kill your man, let him know you're reading it all. It's my best.
Get him to read it first. Yeah. Thank you for that.
And he hadn't done anything wrong, bless him, and he's lovely.
He is.
What do you call it?
Bless him. Thank you. Well, then I think that's everything. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Michelle, for everything that you've shared today, for all of your wonderful words, for all of your hilarious examples. And thank you again for writing this book. I know I've done it once, but can we just have another round of applause for Michelle? I'm not going to cry. So we are here for a little while longer. There are books. If you haven't bought your book yet, you can buy one here. If you corner the lady of the moment, she might even sign it for you. If her hand's not too sore from doing all of that book signing yesterday. I got too tired yesterday. It was this morning. We got really early. Love it. Rebellious. So yeah, there are books here. The bar's obviously staying open for another, where are we? I don't know. Another hour and a bit, I think. Yeah, if you haven't done the Good Girl Deprogramming quiz yet, you'll see at the top of the stairs there's a pull-up banner with a QR code on it. Scan it. That will take you to Michelle's website. It will take you into the quiz, or it will take you next to the quiz. You'll be able to do the quiz. And Debbie is here offering some quick card readings if you are a bit witchy like me and would like a card reading, or if you're not and just want one as well, because she's fabulous. And I think that's everything. Oh, cupcakes. Oh, there are some cakes behind at the back, so grab a cake. But I also want to say a massive thank you. I'm going to cry now. Oh, don't cry. Don't cry, I'll cry. I couldn't have done this without you. Thank you. Or poor James. And poor Oliver.